I felt stuck in my agency and my revenue didn't grow for over a year until I implemented a single change that allowed me to scale from 8K a month to 50K a month in under 6 months. And that is the pricing model that I use. In this video, I'm revealing the exact change that I made, why I made it, and how you can implement it in your own agency to put yourself on an exponential growth curve. Let's get into it. First of all, we'll cover what the old pricing model is that 99% of agency owners use. You probably use the same one, and why it is a broken way to price your services. Then I'll go through what this new pricing model is that I use, and lastly I will reveal a juicy secret. I will tell you how you can use this new pricing model to fly business and first class free forever. So let's get straight into it. First of all, the old pricing model. The standard way to price your agency services is to just charge a 2 to 3K a month retainer charged once a month in advance, and maybe on top of that a setup or an onboarding fee of 2 to 5K that you charge upfront once when you sign on the client. But that is it. Well, there are a couple different issues with this model. I will be breaking down each of these models based on their sellability, their scalability, the initial charge that you get with this model, and lastly, the incentive. So first of all, the sellability. Why is charging this kind of retainer a bad way to sell to new clients? Well, because it is difficult to sell. It has a high risk to the client and there is no risk to you, which you may think is a good thing, like no risk, that's perfect. Well, it's not, because it makes you complacent, because you don't have any incentives to actually perform better. It also has no trust. So completely fundamentally, when people buy from you, it is because they know you, they like you, and they trust you. The no part makes up 10% of the purchase decision. The like part makes up 30%, and the biggest one by far is the trust part, which makes up 60% of the buying decision. And by you having this kind of pricing model, you are showing that you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, which decreases the amount of trust that people have to you when they jump on a sales call, which makes it difficult to sell. Next, scalability. How scalable is this model? Well, it is unscalable because the retainer you charge is the maximum that you will charge that client. Maybe every once in a while you can do a slight price increase or do an upsell, but you will never be able to 10x the amount that you charge a client. You'll never be able to sign someone on 3K a month and then begin charging 30K a month, which is the kind of increase that we are looking for in our agency. 10x measures, and that happens because you are a commodity. It is you versus every other agency out there, and every time you increase your prices, the client will consider the other options because you are equal to every other agency out there. Yes, you may have some unique selling points and some unique ways of doing things, but fundamentally you're just like every other agency out there. Then initial charge, it is again limited to the market rate because you are a commodity, you are competing against the other agencies out there, which creates a low initial charge before any increases and upsells, because you are considered an expense and not an investment in your client's eyes. So every price increase makes you more of an expense, which is a completely shit position to be in. You don't want to be compared to other agencies, and you don't want people to draw lines between you and other offers out there. Lastly, the incentives of this model, and the main reason why I don't like this model. Incentives are so important. I will get to that in a second. This model has no incentives, which means that if you generate better results, you're not going to make any more money. And what is the incentive for you to then deliver better results? Well, there is none. Also, if you want to give your team incentives, those would have to come out of your own pocket. So every time you pay your employees more, you will earn less, because again, there is no incentive from the client. So that incentive has to come from somewhere, which is your own pocket, which creates a dilemma because you need incentives to build a team of A players. No business out there has an amazing team of high performers of A players without incentives. So either you take a cut in your own salary or you don't have incentives, which is not optimal either way. So that brings me on to this new way of pricing the services in your agency, and that is performance-based invoicing. You invoice the client based on the revenue that you generate that client, which is the beauty of running ads. You are able to see the direct return of the work that you do. If you run ads better and learn something new, the client will see that impact, you will see the direct return, and you will be paid more. So there are a couple different types of performance, different ways of structuring this kind of deal. You can have a percentage of spend, you can have KPI-based one-time performance bonuses, and you can have a percentage of revenue. I don't like having a percentage of spend because the incentive, again, is completely wrong. You are incentivized to increase the client's budgets, which is not necessarily what they need to succeed in business. So again, you are working towards different goals, which is not an optimal way to run a business. The next one is a KPI-based one-time performance bonus, where if you reach a certain KPI, let's say a certain spend with a certain ROAS, you get a one-time bonus of, I don't know, 4K, 5K, 10K, doesn't matter. The reason why this model is not ideal is because it gives you those bonuses in lump sums, and you're not able to forecast and actually have a predictable source of income. So you get those cash grabs every once in a while, but you're not able to build a sustainable business on the top of that. So the model that I prefer and that I recommend for you, and the one that I'm using right now, is a percentage of revenue. Here, you can either take a percentage of revenue, including the ad spend, or excluding the ad spend. So including the ad spend, you would not be subtracting the ad spend from the final calculation, while excluding ad spend, you would. So the model that I use at my own agency, the most default model out there, this works like a charm, is taking 5% of ROAS above ad spend. So what that would look like in practice is the following. If your client spends, let's say 20K on ads in a certain month, and you generate them a 5x ROAS, you take those 20K times 5, which gives you 100,000, and then you subtract those initial 20K in spend, leaving you with 80K. You take 5% of that, which is 4K. And the reason that we want to be subtracting the spend from this calculation is because this is money that the client would have had either way, so you're not really giving them any value by taking a percentage off of that. So you don't really deserve to take performance on that. And again, this all goes back to having the right incentives and being aligned with your clients. So we want to be aligned on every single one of these steps. So I recommend taking 5% of ROAS above ad spend as your pricing model. Let's get into why this is such an amazing model. First of all, sellability. It is so easy to sell because there is no risk to the client, and this goes back to Alex Hermosi's make an offer so good they feel stupid saying no saying, because what you're saying basically by having this model is that we'll earn you more money and you'll only pay us once we do. And of course you can say this on the actual sales calls, but that is the underlying assumption behind having a performance model like this one, and this creates a high amount of trust. So going back to this know, like, trust model, they will know you because they are on the sales call. I can't really promise that they will like you based on this model. It will certainly help them like you, but it's not going to be the only deciding factor, but they will trust you because you are showing that you're willing to put your ass on the line and you are confident in your results, which will drastically increase your conversion rate on sales calls. Next, the scalability of this model. It is hugely scalable because you are completely responsible for the results. Only you dictate how much you earn. So if you want to earn more, you just have to become better at what you do, learn something new about meta ads, run the ads better, generate your client a higher ROAS, and that way earn more money, which creates an incredible drive for self-improvement and self-development, which is such a fundamental part of running an agency. This is probably one of your first businesses ever. You are trying to learn the art of business, and having this drive for self-development embedded into the pricing model that you are using will give you so much more development, so much quicker than you would by just having a fixed retainer that pays you the same amount every month without having any incentives to actually become better. It is also just an incredible feeling seeing the direct impact of your hard work. There is such a short feedback loop. If, let's say, this night you read a book, you learn something new about meta ads, tomorrow you go and implement it in the accounts, and then in the evening already you will see the results and begin earning more money, which again is just why I love this agency model. You have direct feedback. If you're doing something wrong, you will see that. If you're doing something right, you will see that. Next, the initial charge of this model. How much are you able to charge initially when just signing a client, well, you can charge more money using this model than you would be able to with a retainer, because you are considered an investment and not an expense by your clients, which reveals a core business truth. You always want to be considered an investment and you never want to be considered an expense, because again, every time you increase your prices, you will be considered more and more and more of an expense until they end up canceling their partnership with you. So basically, having this model also decreases churn. If you have a lower spending account where just taking a percentage of ROAS above ad spend doesn't really make sense because they are spending so little, let me put you on, let me drop some sauce here. Introduce a minimum charge. So you say, I will take 5% of ROAS above ad spend, but with a 2,500, 3K a month minimum, which is a cheat code. You may say, but Alex, this kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a performance model. No, it doesn't, because the fundamental model is still performance, and it is only the perception of the client that actually matters, and they still perceive you as an investment. So this is such an easy way to increase your conversion rate and keep clients for longer and earn more money just by positioning your pricing differently, even if you have a minimum charge and technically you're just charging a retainer the first couple of months. Lastly, the incentives, the most important part of why this model is so amazing. Again, this reveals another core human truth. People do whatever they are incentivized to do. That is a fact in business, in personal life, in your family, in the gym. And this model allows for incentives without taking from your salary, because you only pay the incentives when your agency earns more. So let me get into how you can actually structure this in your own agency. There are a couple different types of performance-based incentives that you can introduce for your employees. The first one is a performance-based incentives. The second one is a milestone-based incentives. And the last one is a monthly incentive. So I've color-coded these based on how much I like them. I don't really like the monthly one. The performance-based one is kind of like on the middle of the tree, while the milestone-based one is my go-to. So let me go through every single one of these. The performance-based one is where you basically give your employees a percentage of whatever revenue they generate for your agency. So this could be a percentage of revenue generated either for your client or for your actual agency. So if your agency charges, let's say 5% of ROAS above ad spend, give your employee 0.5% of that, or 10% of whatever you are invoicing your client. You can also structure it differently, having like a set dollar amount per additional lead or sale. Doesn't really matter. The reason why I'm not a huge fan of this model is that it can get out of hand pretty quickly. So if an account begins doing super well, you can easily end up paying one of your employees 15K in a single month, which is amazing. Of course, it means that you are earning a lot of money as well, but you're not really able to build a sustainable business paying a payroll of 15K per employee. That's why I really like the milestone-based performance deal internally in my agency. And that means giving my employees a certain bonus once they reach a certain milestone. So if they reach, let's say 30K a month in spend for a certain client with a certain ROAS, they get a 1,500, 2K, 3K bonus. It also feels much more noticeable and is much more motivating for employees to have this huge number in front of them instead of just having a percentage of revenue, because they look at this number, 1,500 bucks, that is a pretty noticeable amount of money for a media buyer, and it allows you to maintain complete control of who gets paid when, because you decide what the actual milestone is and you decide what the bonus is for achieving that milestone. So an example here would be if spending an additional 20K in a certain client's account would earn your agency an additional 3K in performance, pay the media buyer $300 once they do it. Just make sure that you only have one milestone per client, so that you have only one goal that your media buyer is working towards, so that their focus isn't split. Just like a quick tip, always have only one milestone and only one goal for every client in your agency. The last model that I don't really like is the monthly one, which is the same as the milestone-based one, just that you update it every single month. So you set new targets every month. The reason that I don't like this one is that it is a lot of work. So every single month you have to sit down for a couple hours, map out those performance bonuses. I don't really see the point when you could just have a big milestone that everyone is working towards. It's important for you to understand the strategy behind these three models because you can always come up with your own. The first fundamental aspect that you have to understand is that it has to align with the performance deal that you have with the client. So when you earn more money, your media buyer should earn more money. And when you don't earn more money because the results are poor, your media buyer shouldn't either. As a rule of thumb, you should give your media buyer 10% of whatever revenue they generate for your agency. So as I said, if they earn you an additional 3K, they should get at least $300 for doing so. Lastly, how can we use this pricing model to actually fly business and fly first class completely for free? Let's get into it. And that is by running clients spend through credit cards that give you points. So an example here is either the Amex Platinum or the Chase Sapphire Preferred credit cards. It's a whole video in itself on how you set these up, but it is completely doable. So your clients spend, let's say 20K a month, you run all of that spend through your card, you generate 20K in spend on your credit card, you get 20,000 points, sometimes even more based on what kind of multiplier you have on those points. And you can use those points for hotel stays, as I said, to fly first class, to fly business class. This is such a cheat code. This is basically free money that is just in front of you if you set this up correctly. And this doesn't create any liquidity issues for your agency since you are using credit cards which have a 30-day payback period. So by the time the credit card bill rolls around, you have already invoiced your client and already received the money. There is some risk involved to this in the sense that your client can just refuse to pay you and you're stuck with this credit card bill. But I have a solution here as well, and that is a no risk option. So what I just came up with a couple of weeks ago, I was at Topgolf with one of my agency buddies, and this was like an epiphany for me. You can just invoice the client first and then top up their ad account with that amount. So you invoice the client 5K. Once that money hits your account, you top up their account with 5K. That way you run the spend through the credit cards without actually taking on any risk. This is slightly more difficult to pitch to clients and sell them on this concept, but you can position it as part of the package. Basically, you worry about all the payment and the payment issues because Meta likes to have payment issues. Every once in a while, they take down one of our ad accounts because of payment issues. So you are the one responsible for that, and basically just the client doesn't have to worry about it. So another perk for them. There is always a way to position this to make it advantageous for the client as well. But this is such a cheat code for living a better life just by utilizing what you already have access to. And let me reveal another small secret to you. If you are struggling to scale past 8K a month with your agency, it's not really your fault, but rather the fault of the broken and outdated SMMA model that you are using. I built a hybrid growth agency using the performance growth protocol to scale to 80K a month with 80+% margins without cold outreach, without charging retainers, and without constant churn. I'm opening up 3 slots to work with me personally one-on-one where I will guide you to implement the performance growth protocol in your own agency to build a hybrid growth agency to scale to 25K a month with 80+% margin. So if that sounds interesting, reach out to me on Instagram. Let's talk about it. Other than that, have an amazing week. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the top.